What is up, everyone? Welcome to this week's Nerdball Fantasy Football Show. I am your humble host, Pete Rogers, and I am joined for the first time by all of the nerds. We have resident old man Clark Barnes, working girl Jordan Smith, and the ginger woodsman Nick Bodiford. How are we doing, everyone?
Doing great, Pete.
Doing good.
Good, Pete. How are you?
I am well. Jordan, welcome to the first show ever. But welcome to the Nerdball Fantasy Football Show. We've missed you the last 2 weeks, but now you're here, back with us.
Yeah, I can't wait to participate in some of this nerd talk and just pick up right where we left off from the other show with our hot fantasy takes.
Yeah, the show that we shall never speak the name of again because it is dead. And we've been reborn, just much like, did Fox's name, the Phoenix, change? Did its name change when it was reborn in the Harry Potter series? I know Nick knows. Nick is obsessed with Harry Potter.
I'd like to date myself and say I was about to get upset with you for bringing up a nerd comic book reference, and then you outdid yourself coming up with a nerd Harry Potter reference.
Thank you. But in the X-Men comics, she's not. Her name isn't Fox. It's Jean Grey. Is that who you're talking about, Phoenix?
Right. That's why I was going to correct you, but then I realized it's just that I'm old and no longer a part of the zeitgeist, and so now
Fox keeps his name.
He does. See, I knew Nick. Look at him. That man just loves Harry Potter. Nick, I thought you got yourself a new microphone that was all supposed to be glorious and beautiful.
Well, I didn't get a new one. I guess I just didn't connect the one I have. So I'll be fiddling with that while we do the show.
Perfect. And now you can see Nick fiddling while you listen to the show because we're releasing it on YouTube, everyone. So you can come watch our beautiful faces talk to you if you so choose. All right, we got a lot to talk to you all about. Obviously, we're going to get into a lot of Julio Jones talk today since that was the breaking news on Monday. But before we do, I wanted to check in on Deandre Swift. Because I feel like he's going from like this fantasy darling that everyone was kind of like, ooh, Deandre Swift could be a low-key RB1 given his workload, given being in Detroit. And now to like a fantasy snarling because he's an aggressive line that no one wants to pet. There's been lots of different things that are going on. There was a report from The Athletic. They sat down with the Lions' new offensive coordinator, Anthony Lynn. And in their conversation, Lynn called Jamal Williams, who they signed in free agency, quote, a classic A back. The full quote is, I like to break the backs into A and B. My A backs are normally my bigger backs. They run between the tackles, block probably a little bit better than B backs. They can also run the perimeter. I can leave those guys in for all three downs. Clark, will the Deandre Swift Ice Bucket Challenge ever stop? Because this man's fantasy stock is just plummeting rapidly.
All right, so at some point, everyone has value. And I believe that Deandre Swift is an incredibly talented running back that one of these days is going to be getting the lion's share of the work.
Nice.
But getting a ringing endorsement from a creative play caller like Anthony Lynn is the most damning evidence of we should really pump the brakes on Deandre Swift as a second-round running back. Now, what I like about these guys is as a second-round running back, I don't really like Deandre Swift. As a back end of the third-round running back, I love him. And that's how much we're splitting hairs with these guys because he's incredibly talented. But the guy who wanted to start Tyrod Taylor all year last year, were it not for some dodgy doctor work, would have, Justin Herbert wouldn't have seen the field. So this feels an awful lot like I'm going to go with the boring, slower, not quite as good back, who I love, by the way, in Jamal Williams, instead of the exciting electric back that we have in Deandre Swift. I wasn't a huge fan before this news and now feel completely vindicated with my pump the brakes on Deandre Swift hype.
Jordan, do you think it's realistic at all to be able to draft Deandre Swift as a RB1 or even like as a top 15 running back at the moment?
Top 15, I would say yes. Okay. When you first hear the pull quote of calling Jamal Williams a running back, it makes it sound like Anthony Lynn was saying he's just going to be the lead guy, like the primary ball carrier, which is, I mean, Anthony Lynn himself is going to cap that running back room's entire fantasy value more so than the splitting of carries.
A lot of
He's
Anthony
not-
Lynn love on this podcast.
He's not wrong though in saying that Jamal Williams is like a big back who runs between the tackles. But as somebody who has watched Jamal Williams play football for the past 3 years and see just about every snap that he has been in on, he likes to run into the back of the offensive line and, churn out 2 or 3 yards a piece. I don't think that's going to cut into Deandre Swift's fantasy value. It's going to be the Lions offense as a whole that caps him.
Yeah, I'll be less.
Ooh, look at that microphone quality from Nick Boniford.
Silky smooth. So Anthony Lynn should not be employed in the NFL, and I just felt like insulting him.
Yay.
Outside of that, so Ian Hartitz had a fun interview with Swift on his PFF podcast, and I got a kick out of it because he was asking Swift how he would feel about different types of workloads. Like, does he prefer to line up, play receiver or take a bunch of carries? And Swift just kind of like uttered the company line of, "I'm here to do whatever the team asks me." And then he asked him if the rumors were true and that the team was like considering getting a lion to have pace around at practice, and Swift like dropped all professionalism and just went, no, he did not want a lion on the field at all. And I thought that was really funny. But anyway, Campbell had that quote really early on about how Swift could be used more properly by lining him up in the slot. And we were all like, oh my God, he's going to be the lead back and he's going to get like slot receiver work. That's incredible. Anthony Lynn now coming in and talking about Jamal Williams as the A back, who I was surprised, Clark, that was the meanest stuff you've ever said about Jamal Williams. You were typically his biggest defender on the podcast, which you did say that you love him, but I am starting to wonder if we're going to see like an older school version of, this is not an original take here because everybody's talking about the duo, but Melvin Gordon, Austin Eckler, not like the fun Austin Eckler like last year.
The one that neither of them really has fantasy value.
Where, Williams is like an early down plotter, and I'm sure that they'll keep him on the field for pass protection responsibilities because he is a very good pass blocker. But I wonder if Swift is actually just going to be like a higher snap James White kind of a running back this year. And so
still has PPR value, but he's not. That's not. I mean, we currently have him ranked as our running back 19 over on the site, and so like that's. I don't know. Somehow keeping him outside of the top 20 feels wrong, but also top 20 seems a little high. Clark, what do you think?
Yeah. That's the weirdest thing about Williams is that he's not a passing down back and he's not a fantastic between the tackles back. He's just good.
Yeah.
And so that's just catnip for bad coaches is a running back who's just good and experienced really gets in the way of dynamic young playmakers bursting onto the scene. And while I love Jamal Williams, that's what's I think is going to happen here in Detroit. He's not good enough to be exciting as a standalone fantasy asset, but he's just good enough for someone like Anthony Lynn to give him 10 touches when he should be getting 5. And DeAndre Swift has an already mediocre season set up by Jared Goff being the quarterback and your coach being like, we're going to hit him in the mouth and we're going to hit him again and we're going to get
a lion on the sideline.
This is just
I honestly, I'm with these comments and how much I detest Anthony Lynn, I'm starting to wonder if Williams is actually a candidate to outtouch Swift in like half of the games this year. And I'm much more interested in his running back 43 ADP.
Is that where he's currently going?
Than I am in. So over the last week per fantasy football calculator and half point PPR, 45. I am much more interested actually in Gus Edwards at 44. I like Gus Edwards.
Gus Edwards at 44 is stealing.
By the way, we'll talk about that next week.
Yeah.
But I think I would rather add Williams way late. I mean, I wouldn't draft Swift before like the 5th or 6th round. And I will never have him because of that reason.
Yeah. Well, that's it for Swift. I mean, I feel like we've covered that basis pretty well. Just wanted to. I feel like he's quickly being a guy, like he started the year as such, like everyone, there was high expectations for him, and things are quickly souring. And I haven't seen a lot of people in the fantasy community being like going to bat for like the pro Deandre Swift. So I was curious as to where everyone is at.
Well, he's really good and he's really exciting, but
this situation is just awful.
It's hard to bet on running backs on bad teams.
Yeah. All right, well, let's talk Julio. This was the main news of today. Obviously, the Falcons have been shopping him around, and people were kind of like, why have the Falcons been shopping Julio Jones? If they extended Matt Ryan or restructured his contract to make Matt Ryan be like the presumed quarterback of the future, why did they go and draft Kyle Pitts as opposed to, drafting Trey Lance if they were going to, or Justin Fields if they were going to be rebuilding? Well, it seems as though that the Falcons have been shopping Julio Jones because Julio Jones has requested a trade quietly behind the scenes a couple months ago. And now officially, I guess, from his mouth, on Undisputed today, Shannon Sharp cold called Julio Jones, and he quote said on the air, on speakerphone, "I'm out of there. I want to win." Now, there's many, did he know about this call ahead of time? Some people say no. Clark, the WWE wrestler, says definitely he knew about it ahead of time. This is 100% a publicity stunt, which, honestly, I could see that.
I feel like calling it a stunt is a little bit further than I want to go, but this is definitely a planned happening where Shannon Sharp maybe got a text from Julio and was like, hey man, I want to get it out there that I'm looking for a trade. Someone trying to ratchet up the negotiations. Because if the Falcons have already been trying to trade him and it's not going how he wants it to go, it seems reasonable to take it to another level. We were talking about this in our group chat earlier. The idea that Shannon Sharp was like, oh, I'll just call up Julio while I'm working on this national TV show and it'll be totally impromptu. That's just bupkis, guys. Like, that's not true. But the act is very much true and very much a signal that we should be paying attention to, is that Julio Jones tried to do it the right way. He tried to let the Falcons know, like, hey, I'm not super happy here. It looks like you're going into some kind of weird rebuilding phase that I don't want to be a part of. I would like to be traded, apparently months ago. And that hasn't worked out. So now he's stepping it up. He's gone on national TV saying, I want to win, which is like the ultimate FU to the team that you're going from. And so this is a big step up. And like on this podcast, I've said, I don't believe that Aaron Rodgers is leaving because he has no leverage. Why would you trade this QB? Why would you do all of that? But with Julio Jones, although one of the best wide receivers we've seen in the past decade, he is just a wide receiver. And it's not really outside the realm of possibility that he would be traded for a second or third round pick with that salary that he has coming his way. So I do think that this is big news. And I do think that this means Julio will not play for the Falcons in 2021.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty fair bet with the fact that the Falcons have been like open to trading him and have been seemingly looking for it. It hasn't been something like with Deshaun Watson. Obviously, there's a lot of different circumstances there, but the Houston Texans have actively been like, we are not trading you, back before everything came to light. It seems like the Falcons have been like, all right, we'll entertaining offers. We want a first. Now they're kind of looking really for a second. So ultimately, Julio Jones on the trade block, likely to get moved, coming off of a disappointing season, but mostly because of injury in terms of fantasy production. So Jordan, to you, what is the best fantasy landing spot for Julio Jones in 2021? What team gives him his peak value for fantasy?
Well, I more or less took a look at this in terms of cap space to see who could actually add him to their roster. Because I mean, the obvious choices would be like throw him on the Chiefs and watch Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback, throw it to one of the best receivers. That's easy money. But I actually went into a different division team, or same division, different team, and I put him on the LA Chargers because I think that there would be a nice little spot in there to fill that Mike Williams role that, I mean, Mike Williams hasn't himself really filled out all that well over the past couple of seasons. Put him opposite of Keenan Allen. And if Justin Herbert takes another step, if he's as good as people are projecting him to be, then I think that is a place where Julio could thrive. And that that entire LA Chargers team could end up like racing their potential for the remainder of the season. Remember, there's no Hunter Henry around anymore. There's just some opportunity there, despite Mike Williams still being on the roster. I think that if they added Julio, who's a big target himself, that is just an instant upgrade and a great spot for him. And they can afford to make the trade if they choose.
Yeah, this would be a damper. We're going to talk about it next week, but I just recently staked my flag on Mike Williams Hill because of what you were touching though, Jordan, because Hunter Henry leaving 93 targets that Hunter Henry leaves behind, but also 14 red zone targets, which was ninth in the NFL last year. And I was like, oh, Mike Williams, 6'4", 220 pounds. I mean, the guy has to be, take some of those red zone targets. I think he's also on the last year of his deal, Mike Williams is. And so this could be something where if they're not going to reach a long-term decision, if they're not going to offer him a long-term deal, maybe you trade for Julio at a discount price. You play with those three receivers and you basically have Mike Williams kind of being a big slot guy. Well, I guess that's where Keenan Allen operates, but there is a balance there to have those three receivers put up solid production. And obviously Justin Herbert is, the second coming. He looked great last year. So pairing Julio Jones with a guy who can rip it downfield, I'm in full support of that.
Yeah, I like it. What I like about this discussion is when we're trying to think about how good Julio Jones is, you can just name any team and then tell the story about how great it would be. And I do like the Chargers. Keenan Allen's getting a little older. Mike Williams, are they going to keep him around? Those three guys to give Herbert just kind of that breakout sophomore season to set that franchise up would be awesome. While you were going, Jordan, you mentioned the Chiefs, which was my first reaction of like, oh God, please. Like just to have Julio on one side, Tyreek Hill on the other side, and then Travis Kelce running routes from inline, Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the background. I mean, like build on a strength. The Chiefs don't have a second wide receiver. I would love to see them make a play for Julio. They just traded a first-round pick for the pleasure of paying Orlando Brown $500 million to play tackle for them. Like, why not get Julio? That would be fun too.
So, Clark, you've been like one of the biggest proponents you've been banging the Travis Kelce is a first-round pick drum for as long as this show has existed, and I'm speaking also this show we shall not speak of before this, because the Nerdball show has only existed for 3 weeks now. If the Chiefs did go out and trade for Julio Jones, would that temper your excitement for Travis Kelce? No, you would still be like Travis Kelce is a first round tight end.
No, there's so much to go around in that offense that it would just narrow those auxiliary pieces. Mm-hmm. Travis Kelce is a threat you cannot match up against. The Chiefs just don't have a second wide receiver, and that while they've been an incredibly explosive offense, that is one of the things that's hurt them. They've tried to fill that in with Sammy Watkins. They've tried to fill that in with other players. Like it's good to have a good second wide receiver and to have your good second wide receiver being Julio Jones.
Pretty good. Quizzical Nick, what do you like?
Well, so I've been looking through like pre and post June 1 trade numbers for Julio. And it looks like if they trade him after June 1st, the only thing that they're on the hook for is the prorated bonus money that they've already given him, which is $7,750,000. They would save $15,300,000 if they trade him after June 1. I like the Chargers talk. I think that theoretically it's awesome. And post June 1, it would work. I actually had an exchange with Sigmund Bloom about the possibility of sending Mike Williams over there, but Mike Williams is making more than Julio is this year by like 300,000. So that's just kind of
not really helping the Falcons, who are like, we need to shed cap like a mofo.
And that is really one interesting point. Like they can't take on another player. No, they really can't. They can't. Exactly. They've got like 300,000 available in terms of their cap. So they can't really afford to bring anybody on. If they have injuries in season, you got to save a little bit of money to sign people in the middle of the year. I think two teams that make sense and might also be fun would be the Jacksonville Jaguars. I know that they have a lot of players. They have a lot of receivers I think that we all like. But DJ Chark has been good for 1 year out of his career. That's really it. He's had one good season. Laviska Shenault seems to be extremely capable, extremely talented, and Urban Meyer is letting us know that he wanted to have Kadarius Toney play.
So he's just going to make Travis Etienne that.
Exactly. Well, but it was supposed to. I mean, he basically said, "I wanted Kadarius Toney to play what we all think Laviska Shenault should play," and then he said, "Now we're going to have Travis Etienne do it instead." And like, I don't think that Shenault has this big entrenched role anymore, and I don't know that DJ Chark is actually very good. So if Julio goes there, I think he's the wide receiver.
Oh, Nick throwing shade.
I think that he is probably a talented receiver, but we really have only seen him do it once. Outside of that, it hasn't been very good.
Also, don't sleep on red zone monster Marvin Jones, buddy.
So, and I like Colin Johnson a lot. He's like 6'7". He's an albatross. Like, I think he'd be a great weapon too in the red zone. But what I'm saying is Urban Meyer, I don't think he's attached to any of these guys. There's no one who's terribly established. I think Julio would fit well there. They have $39 million in cap space. The other team that I think would be able to make this work, again, Julio, it would require 15.3 million in space. Well, the Cleveland Browns have 20.97 or 20.9, let's say, in cap space. I mean, I don't know what we're all thinking of Odell Beckham Jr. I think that, like, given it, a late ADP, I think that he's a cool pick, but they've got a lot of contracts ending that they're going to have to let players go, or they're going to re-sign a lot of guys in the next couple of years, especially in their like playmaking core. They got to re-sign Nick Chubb. I think Jarvis Landry's contract is up fairly soon. They're going to have to make some decisions. And hey, if they bring in Julio Jones and feel okay letting one of their pass catchers go, I mean, I can see that working out. So yeah, Julio to the Browns, I would dig that.
Yeah. I love the Jaguars was on my list too of teams too that would give him good fantasy value, because you're totally right, Nick. Like, DJ Chark has a lovely place in my heart because I snagged him at like the last round of a dynasty league, and before he was anything, and then he broke out the year afterwards, and I was like, oh, I knew what I was doing. So that was fun. But outside of that, like, yeah, Marvin Jones is on the back end of his career. Laviska Shenault is, you're trying to figure out what exactly this role is, especially the role that he was drafted to be last year seems to be what you're saying, like challenged by whatever Travis Etienne is going to be. And so this is a receiving room that certainly could use a like go-to number one guy who would help everyone on the field. And you didn't even touch on it, but it's, we don't really need to, but Trevor Lawrence is there now, who's a really effing good quarterback and will be like, it would be a great addition for him fantasy wise. And it would be a great addition for everyone around. Like, I do think it would help DJ Chark. DJ Chark suddenly is not going to be getting double coverage or seeing safety help over the top because you got Julio Jones running alongside of him. Nick, the team I was surprised thought you were going to mention instead of the Browns, and I'm surprised you didn't bring it up. I kind of talked myself into the Tennessee Titans going after Julio. I was at first like, I'd seen it getting batted around on the Twitter sphere, and I was like, nah. Jordan has talked about this too, and I've been in agreement with him where it's like, well, there's the perception that they don't throw the ball that much. They don't really target AJ Brown enough to like make him a reliable RB or wide receiver one. But they had the third fewest pass attempts last year, but they're stupid efficient. But I didn't realize that when Corey Davis left and with Jonnu Smith gone, 157 targets are now just floating in the wind there, and which is a ton of work for Julio to walk into. Obviously, AJ Brown is going to step into a bunch of those too, but they need that number 2 wide receiver. Corey Davis, as that number 2 wide receiver last year, finished the wide receiver 31 in a half-point PPR, and he missed 2 games. If you gave him a full season, he was the wide receiver 25. So, like, it's surprising to me that this Titans offense carried AJ Brown, who was a top 12 wide receiver last year in half point, and a top 25 wide receiver in half point. Like that, I think this offense has more passing oomph to it than we'd expect. There is a change. Arthur Smith is no longer in charge of it, so who knows what it's going to look like. But this Titans offense with Julio Jones in it would be saucy, and it would be a move that makes sense because it's like a team that wants to make a big push in the AFC that's always been out on the fringe, and adding a talent like Julio would certainly do that.
I think that the Titans might be the best. Actually, the Chiefs are the best perfect world landing spot. I think Titans are up there. I saw Evan Silva tweeting about it. He loves that as a landing spot. Here's the problem: they have $3.5 million in cap space, and So what are they
And
going to
that's
do?
it.
So-
So there's your problem.
Who's they? The
So-
Titans or the Chiefs?
And sorry, what's that?
Who's they? The Titans
The
or
Titans.
the Chiefs?
The Titans. Sorry.
So here we go. Just give Derrick Henry guaranteed money, push that bonus out, keep him going for another 4 years that we all know he's worth it, and then you bring in Julio Jones.
I mean, it's what the Chiefs have
Fail-proof.
been doing. It's what the Saints have been doing.
Just put it on the credit card.
Saints have been running that credit card for 20 years.
They might be able to. But I mean, they got a long way. So to feasibly do that, they have 3.5 million available. I mean, they're going to have to, so going to add 12 million just to cover it. And then you probably want another like 5. I mean, yeah, they're going to have to come up with another like 17 or 18 million in free money. They might be able to. I think that would be very hard, but maybe they could.
What would
The
be
issue
fun
again is
about
just
that is they make all of these moves to put themselves in the same position that Atlanta is in right now.
exactly.
Just keep putting it on the credit card.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I love the idea of him going to the Titans just because him playing outside of or alongside AJ Brown is probably the scariest 1-2 duo outside of like DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, which I have a huge affinity for. Just what both of those guys can do is pretty amazing. But I mean, I don't know, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and Tim Patrick, I don't know. But that's an interesting take. The Jaguars take, though, like nothing would be more Jaguars than going out and signing Julio Jones when you have DJ Chark and having Travis Etienne try to play the Laviska Shenault role, which Laviska Shenault played very well last year.
Good. He was a top like 50 receiver in fantasy.
Or just like, despite the numbers and anything, like, I know that this is excruciating and I hate to ask anyone to do this, but go watch the Jaguars games. Laviska Shenault looks like an athlete out there amongst NFL players. And that's what you're looking for with rookies is like, do you look special against all these other guys that are incredibly talented? Laviska Shenault did. And DJ Chark does too. And he's just never had anybody play quarterback for him. So now I am 100% convinced that the Jaguars are going to go out and sign Julio Jones and just, it's going to be a special season for Jaguars fans to be so excited and then so disappointed.
Wouldn't be a show without Clark throwing some sort of hate and shade at the Jaguars.
We're doing team previews over at Nerdball, and if you think I'm throwing shade at the Jaguars, you just wait until you read my Jets primer.
Ooh, I thought it was gonna be your Jaguars primer, which is gonna be just like
the
5
New Jersey
words.
Jets
They exist.
are getting it.
Oh baby. Jordan, you're normally my like lone person who always takes whenever we do these exercises of like, where could this player go? Where could this player go? You always pick my Patriots. I'm hurt that you didn't bring them up as a possible landing spot.
Oh, Julio said he wanted to win, so I don't know why he'd want to go
Julio
there.
loves Cam. That's where he wants to be. That was harsh. Said from a man whose quarterback is flirting with retirement.
Good job.
I mean that could be a good spot if Mac Jones is the starter and you get the Alabama connection. I just think that from a fantasy perspective, the Pats have kind of, well, I mean, you draft a first round quarterback. I feel like he's going to play at some point.
I don't want to.
Their other offseason moves have suggested that they really don't care that much about having a big wide receiver one. Otherwise, I feel like they would have made a stronger push on some other available guys with literally all those bags of cash they were just throwing out the window.
I'm glad to see Late Night Clark has joined us on the pod.
Smooth
So,
Jazz Clark Barnes just joined us.
Couple of comments there.
Is that a mango?
Watchers of the YouTube show may realize that I have just gone Kangol hat.
Yeah. And this is just the impetus for why you have to watch the YouTube show is because
showing both my age and my fashion sense.
Oh my God, it's Date Mike. Isn't that isn't in the office? His alter ego Mike. Date Mike, and he just throws on the Kanga. Yes, there it is. Date Clark.
Nice
Date
to
Clark
meet
is
me.
Well, while we're throwing around names of teams that we'd like to see Julio go to, I mean, why not get absolutely ridiculous and have him go to the Kangol sporting Bruce Arians. Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Going to the Bucks because the Bucks need all the help they can get. Yeah, I love it.
Why not? An embarrassment of riches. And I would just like to throw in here, I don't know how we've come this far in the podcast and not discussed how this would be a fantastic opportunity for Brian Gutekunst to appease Aaron Rodgers and bring in Julio Jones to run opposite of Devontae Adams. How excited would that be?
I've decided to exclude myself from that narrative because it's Packers Twitter wants every single available wide receiver and pass catcher, but it could be a way to, like, if they really give Rodgers that extension that he's been wanting, to kind of push some money around and then trade for Julio Jones. If they make all these moves post June 1, then I mean,
here's what this is what the Packers need to do: extend Rodgers, trade for Julio, fire Gutekunst, and you're like, welcome home, baby. Let's ride. Let's go to the Super Bowl, baby. That's how they do it.
What if they finally bring in a number 2 receiver by trading Aaron Rodgers away into
trade him to Atlanta so nobody is happy?
That would
Oh yes. There's the earth-shattering trade is the Atlanta Falcons trade Julio Jones for Aaron Rodgers.
I had
Thanks for Brett Favre in the 90s, but yeah, have a quarterback back.
Aaron Rodgers is thanks. Oh, I love it. Okay, well, so if Julio does get traded, obviously that then changes the look of the Atlanta Falcons offense. And so let's spend a little time touching on what would be left in Atlanta and whether and how that would spice things up. Now, I didn't realize that this was a spicy take, but according to Nick, that this is a take that he's going to have much angst towards as the captain. Clark has arisen. He's a captain now. Okay. Captain Clark is here with us. Wow. Date Clark was in and out. And
now he's Rob Riggle on the thing where he beds Meredith on the booze cruise.
This is Clark now just needs to circle through different. You need to pull a Dwight Schrute and get a wig for every single person in the office and then just cycle through them.
Look, this is me officially anointing myself the captain of the Kyle Pitts hype train.
Okay,
Julio
you
Jones
don't get to
league.
do that. I get to be the Kyle Pitts hype train because I was on the group Slack channel. I was like, Kyle Pitts is going to rival George Kittle as a tight end 3, and Nick was like, really? That's my Nick impression.
Stunning.
Thank you, Clark. Good. I'm glad someone is joining me because I don't think that this is that crazy. Like, I guess here's my argument for why Kyle Pitts, if Julio Jones leaves, Kyle Pitts is instantly, in my book, like rivaling George Kittle for that tight end 3 spot. Because if you were to just think of it this way, close our eyes, let's do a little experiment. If Kyle Pitts played wide receiver in college and was drafted as a wide receiver with Julio gone, like if he was Jamar Chase or like in that instance, do you think he would at least be a wide receiver 37 in PPR, half point PPR fantasy with Julio gone?
Yeah, Kyle Pitts is a wide receiver.
Exactly. And so if he's at least a wide receiver 37, if that's what you think he would be, that is what Robert Tonyan was in his total PPR scoring last year with the Packers, he finished as the tight end 3. Let's go back to 2019. 2019, all of the tight ends were playing, were active, were healthy. We had Travis Kelce at 1, George Kittle at 2, Darren Waller at 3. Kittle had 107 targets, 85 catches, 1,053 yards, 5 touchdowns. You telling me Kyle Pitts can't do that? Darren Waller, 117 targets, 90 catches, 1,145 yards, 3 touchdowns. Okay, that was the tight end 3. Tight end 4 was Mark Andrews, 98 targets, 64 catches, 852 yards, 10 touchdowns. Now, Waller and Andrews had 176 and 175 half-point PPR fantasy points total in that year. Both of those guys would have been fringe wide receiver 2s, wide receiver 24 and wide receiver 25 to be exact. So, like Clark said, Kyle Pitts, the whole thing coming into this league was that he was a wide receiver that could play tight end. And if you just treat him as a wide receiver who's going to replace Julio Jones, how does he not then an easy wide receiver 3 in everyone's book and possibly with wide receiver 2 upside, which would instantly make him a top 3 tight end? Riddle me that, Batman.
So I'd like to direct everyone to nerdballff.com, where they can go to the rankings page and see which one of us clowns has had Kyle Pitts ranked ahead of nearly the entire field.
So where was the heat? Where was the heat coming from?
The heat was internalized, Pete, because what I said in response to this was, sounds like we have something to debate on the podcast. Not how dare you or you troglodyte or whatever. It was just, I think we have something to debate here.
Now, something to talk about in agreement, not debate. Debate is a contrary opinion.
I also find, Clark, this is the first time that you have ever expressed optimism towards Kyle Pitts, because this whole time I have been like, you guys, he's going to Atlanta. He's playing in Arthur Smith's system. This is bananas. And Julio might get traded. Hence why I ranked him as the tight end 4, which maybe he goes past Kittle or Waller for the tight end 3 spot. I
thought for sure this is going to be a debate. This isn't. This is everyone being like, yes, we all knew this, Pete. Shut up.
So the way that I view rankings, and maybe we should all clarify this for listeners, for readers, is it's a draft guide. It's for when you, like, if you were drafting today, this is how I think that you should draft. And given that we're in whatever the hell month we are, nowhere close to the actual season, I think this is the perfect time to try to grab underappreciated assets. Hence why, especially with the Julio news, I put Kyle Pitts at 4. Pre-draft, I had Kyle Pitts as the tight end 6, and that was with the rumblings of him likely going to Atlanta. Once that was solidified, I bumped him up 2 notches, and there was also the Julio news. So anyway, I think the ranking him as the tight end 4 is totally is. I think it's the right spot for him. I think that these top 3 guys, Kelsey, we're not touching. I'm starting to actually come around to Clark's argument that Waller should be number 2, and Kittle is 3 currently. I think I have Kittle as 2 on the rankings, but point is, we've got these 3 established dudes, and thank you, who have shown they can do it at an all-pro level in the NFL. I think putting the rookie ahead of TJ Hawkinson, who's probably going to lead his team in targets, is like high enough. If we want to fight, sorry, I need some water. If we want to fight about 3, we totally can, but like, he deserves to be part of this big elite group for sure.
Okay. I came to the show with too much heat. Clark, go ahead.
So when you put out rankings, every once in a while, you show up on a podcast and someone's like, I can't believe you didn't like this person. And you're like, oh shit, where did I have that person ranked? And then you go back and you look at it. I have Kyle Pitts ranked as my 5th tight end. So I feel like we're all on board. I take no shade from undervaluing Kyle Pitts. I just put him behind Mark Andrews because I believe in Lamar Jackson coming back into the world.
We should talk about Mark Andrews, but Clark, I'm just saying on the podcast every time
that is a debate.
That is a debate. But Clark, every time I've been like, Kyle Pitts, I mean, Julio might get traded. This is amazing. You've been like, well, history's shown us that it takes 3 years to draft a tight end properly.
Sounds like something I'd say. But when the rubber met the road, he's my number 5 tight end.
Because we should have Patty on to talk about Pitts, because he's
Patty has him as 10.
Well, it's like you ranking what's his name from the Packers as the number 9 wide receiver. You screwed up our whole rankings. We can talk about that later.
My rankings fucked the whole thing up.
Yeah, Nick just shitting all over shit like a shitter. Jordan, how do you feel about Kyle Pitts?
Well, one thing to keep in mind about like the tight ends in the NFL is that it's really easy to kind of crack the top 5. I think it's a hotter take if you're putting Pitts at like number 1 or number 2 for fantasy rankings purposes. I'm really curious to see how, like, I really want to get to, like, I don't want to blow through summer too fast, guys, but I really want to see how training camps start to shake out so we can get some like reports from the sidelines and stuff that we missed out on last year, just to see how they're like practicing with Pitts. I don't think they're going to practice with him as like a traditional tight end. I think if anything, he'll split time between, learning some stuff from Hayden Hurst and then being on the sideline with the wide receivers, because if Julio's gone, then Kyle Pitts seeing 100 targets is not out of the question. And I think he'll be used more as a guy that's split outside. I am very high on TJ Hawkinson this year because I think this is like a season where he could finally put it all together. Travis Kelce is my tight end 1. George Kittle's back up there. That might alter though if the quarterback situation flips around, maybe. Just because there's a lot of unknowns there. I think Mark Andrews can get back into the mix. Kyle Pitts getting added to the NFL is great for fantasy purposes. I think the tight ends might be. I think tight end might be back if he has a good season.
It's suddenly a saucy position.
Again.
Yeah, it's suddenly a position. Also, to your point, Jordan, the absolute first like reporter sideline shaky iPhone handheld camera video of Kyle Pitts, mossing someone for a one-handed touchdown catch while towing the line. I'm going absolutely crazy, and suddenly I'm drafting him first round. I'm drafting him ahead of Travis Kelce. As soon as that footage that will comes out, I'm going to lose my effing mind.
Yeah, any sort of just small practice drill where Kyle Pitts is doing things and it's got a caption like he is not human. He doesn't have pads on, just a helmet. But yeah, I can't wait for that season to come out.
Let's throw shade at Clark before we go. Clark, Calvin Ridley is your wide receiver 11. Why? Poor K.
Because Julio Jones lives there, and they're not going to both feast.
But Julio Jones is gone. It's happened. You missed it, Clark. Breaking news. He got traded.
CR's better than Julio too.
Yeah.
You might recall, Clark, in I think it was June of last year when I made the bold proclamation that that Ridley would both be a top 5 wide receiver and outscore Julio in 2020. And
this is the last time Clark's ever going to show up on the podcast.
Well, sometimes the injury gods smile on you. And as my dad used to say, even a blind hog roots up an acorn every once in a while.
Ooh, nice. Well said I like Clark right there, just pitching that Nick's success only came from rooting for injury. That's
am I the hog?
Savvy veteran move. Yes, you're a hog, Nick.
Oh, I thought he was talking about Ridley.
You're the blind hog.
Okay.
You're not even.
You're not just a hog. You are blind.
That's
no offense to blind hogs that might be listening to the podcast, by the way.
We didn't talk about that, like with the Julio Jones discourse, though. He's 32 years old, and he missed the last month of the season, and he doesn't score touchdowns. So
it is true.
It's true. I mean, that Matt Ryan doesn't throw a lot of touchdowns in the red zone. Like, I love Calvin Ridley, and I think his value
it's just Calvin Ridley
outside of Julio Jones doesn't matter. Like, I think he's incredibly talented, and he's going to step into that wide receiver 1 role either this year or eventually. And all of my apprehensions against him were wrong. He's fantastic. But Matt Ryan just really seems to hate to throw touchdowns to wide receivers in the red zone.
Steve from Stats and Information is getting some quick. Let's see. Matt Ryan threw 19 touchdowns in the red zone last year, which if I could do some quick counting, 1, 2, 3,
that's a
4,
lot.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9th. That was 9th most, tied with Lamar, Drew Brees, and that's it. Lamar and Drew Brees.
Were they all to the best running back, Todd Gurley?
Are we going to talk about Mike Davis? Speaking of which,
yeah, but let's talk about his quads. They're amazing, right? They're huge. That means he's an RB1, right?
His kneecaps look so small.
It looked like, yeah.
So wait, real conversation here. If Julio's gone,
what have we been doing up until this point?
Ridley is the number 1 receiver. Kyle Pitts is the number 2, or excuse me, Ridley's the number 1 pass catcher. Kyle Pitts is number 2. Mike Davis is the number 3. Or people buying Russell Gage?
Get out of here with Russell Gage.
Zacchaeus, all those guys.
No, I'm 100% on Mike Davis. Mike Davis was like a do-it-all weapon for the Panthers, showed that he could handle that load, succeeded at doing that load, and now is with Arthur Smith in Atlanta, where they're going to emphasize both the ground game and also getting the ball to him out of the, like, I think Mike Davis is a locked-in RB15 at the very least. Am I right?
But he's not good.
That doesn't matter. He's got quads of steel, Clark. His quads are enormous.
No, but addressing actually like if he is good or bad, I think that he's proficient and especially proficient
he gets
as
the job
a pass
done.
catcher. And like he hits, I think he hits all of the necessary NFL starting running back thresholds, especially one in today's day and age where you need to be able to catch the ball. I think that he is proficient. Do I think that, like, would I take him talent wise over, I don't know, 15 NFL backs? Probably not. But in the right system, like, I mean, Deandre Swift, way better. I will draft Mike Davis far ahead of Deandre Swift, and talent there has nothing to do with it. It's just, he can do all these things. Swift can do them even better, but Swift's not going to get to do them.
There's whoever the Falcons bring in or drafted in the 6th round, I'm taking shots. Mike Davis, just
JV Hawkins. He's like, he's a little bit undersized, but yeah, I think he's totally worth taking as a late round pick.
Todd Gurley, we can all agree, was playing on non-existing knees, and
technically Davis's knees don't exist either. They're so small.
Did you see those little kneecaps in that picture?
Todd Gurley's basically out of the league right now. Todd Gurley, from weeks 1 to 9 last year on the Falcons in half-point PPR, was the wide receiver or the running back 6. Running back 6. It doesn't matter if you're good.
I know.
As long as you get touches.
Do you think there are just pictures around Atlanta's front offices of Michael Turner's thighs, and Mike Davis is just like, yes, I need to get there?
Michael Turner's thighs.
Thick Lord, he was.
Michael Turner will always have a special place in my heart because when I was growing up in high school, I was like addicted to Madden 08, and Michael Turner was on every single one of my rosters. That man was the boss.
I've got a great idea that I'm just going to put out into the football universe.
Perfect. Let it be the final thing.
The Detroit Lions are completely bereft of wide receiver talent.
No.
Going into this season.
No.
So
in the podcast,
Atlanta Falcons,
I'm going to burn you to the ground.
The Atlanta Falcons need to trade Julio Jones for Deandre Swift. They can throw in Mike Davis, get a 3rd round pick in return, and we'll just call it squaresies.
All right, if DeAndre Swift goes to Atlanta with no running backs in front of him as part of this deal, I will allow Julio Jones to go to the Detroit Lions. It's the only way it happens.
I was mad about the idea of Devontae Smith going to Detroit. Julio Jones going, I mean, just cut him. Just cut him from the league. Like he would be better not playing football than have to fucking play for goddamn Anthony Lynn, catching stupid, shitty passes from Jared Goff. Fuck that idea. No, we're not doing that.
God. And I thought I was showing up to this show with fire. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us this week. Make sure you rate and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, on any podcast platform. We are there. Make sure you follow us on Twitter as well, at NerdballFF. Also, if you enjoyed listening to the show, think about supporting us over at our Anchor page, anchor.fm/nerdballff. We, of course, would appreciate whatever you're willing to contribute. You can follow myself on Twitter at Pete M. Rogers. Follow Clark at NFL Clark, Jordan at Jordan_Smith27, and Nicholas at Ginger__Nick without a K. We will be back at you next week. Until then, my fellow nerds,